Speaking moistly. Speaking.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Speaking Moistly. With me, as usual, is Greg. How's it going, Greg?
I'm doing fantastic, Mark. Happy Tuesday. How are you?
Happy Tuesday to you as well. Good, man. Good. I can't complain. The sports are on. No, not really. I have a fantasy hockey league that I get points, and in the morning now I check my points, but I don't actually watch the games. I don't know if that's cheating.
Good stuff. Good stuff. I've been super obsessed with Sudoku lately.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I got a new app. It's a good pastime, good for the brain and all that stuff.
Gotta love math. My dad likes Sudoku as well. So COVID.
Have you
Oh, sorry.
have you been legally kidnapped recently?
Not.
Anyone you know?
No, I mean,
No.
I keep thinking every so often they might abscond me to a hotel, but I think if I had internet, I would just mount a letter writing campaign. There would be like, dear whoever, I'd find a lawyer who would be able to represent me. But it is she's so here's a YouTube video, and I shared this with Greg earlier, of Nikki Mathis, and she was kidnapped after her flight because they said your COVID test isn't good enough for some weird reason, and they took her to this undisclosed area. They wouldn't tell her family where she was. Same thing happened to a kid who was coming back to visit his family, but they've got some decent enough Wi-Fi to upload a video from your phone. So I mean, that's something, but I don't think it's freedom. Very concerning. What do you think?
I think it's the premise, like many of what's kind of gone on in the past year. I think the premise or like the principle that's being set is the most concerning thing of all. Because many normie Canadians will be like, "Oh, it's just a precaution. It's just for health and safety." But it's important that we nip this in the butt when it starts to happen, because very reasonable people, as Nikki is in this video, she's like, "Yeah, I really don't like how I don't have the choice or the option to go straight home," and it's slowly we inch towards this strange reality. Like I would just kind of hate the idea that it would be normal to go to a containment center when you get back into the country.
Well,
Uh, that's not a step in the right direction, in my opinion.
no, certainly not. And then having to pay $2,000 for it, and then you do a little bit of reading on the footer of the Radisson Hotel group and realize that it's owned by the People's Republic of China. I mean, I don't have a problem with people owning things and if they put out nice products, but if they remove my basic rights and they remove my ability to be charged with a crime while being detained, I might have a problem with that due to the human rights record of the People's Republic of China. What if you're a Uyghur Canadian?
Yeah,
Right?
is that so? I didn't know that it's owned by the Radisson is owned by.
Oh yeah,
I didn't know that.
yeah, yeah. Oh yeah, it is. You
Well,
gotta watch. You gotta watch my
that's
show, man.
interesting.
Yeah,
That's an interesting factoid.
yeah. That's it. It is, isn't it?
Yeah, I think that for me the crap, I forgot what I was going to say now.
Well,
Shoot.
People's Republic of China owned.
Yeah. Um, no, it's the being it's the normalization of this stuff that scares me the most. Oh, I know what I was going to say. The so many of these COVID measures, I wish people would realize if it disenfranchises anybody, it's like lower to middle class people. Like
Oh
they
yeah.
are getting like the short end of the stick
Mhm.
every single time. And the fact that leftist or progressive parties are going to play up, "Oh, we're so great for lower middle income people," and it's like, no, absolutely not. Like all this overreach, all of this stuff is hurting poor people especially.
Yeah.
And now it's like, oh, you wanted to travel somewhere, it's like you better have an extra $2,000 in your pocket. What?
Yeah, and time to spend in this hotel that you're not allowed to leave. Your boss better be okay with that, just in case. Yahtzee, you get to stay in a government internment camp for an undetermined amount of time. Hopefully, they don't lose faith that you're still around and able to, get out. Right?
You're just making me think of like Bob Barker. You just won a trip to the COVID containment center. When you
Yeah.
get home, you get to stay in this very, room temperature room for a week. We wait for your COVID test, and by the way, you have to pay for it.
Yeah.
There's only three channels: CBC, CTV, and Global News.
Yeah.
But
You better be afraid. You better be afraid of that virus.
Yeah, enjoy your stay.
Yeah, I think that you're right. I think that the precedent that it's setting is concerning. And I think that the way that it's framed, the way they present it is very, very concerning too. Like, you're right. They're saying to people, this is a reasonable thing to want. This is, other countries are doing it. We're allowed to do this. It's for your safety. They're framing it in such a way that they're getting the public to demand this, but demanding this is necessarily demanding the removal of rights. And then they say, well, hold on a second. In the legislature, we have to be sure that we don't remove these rights unless you really want it. And then the public is like, we want to be safe, but it's all fake, right? Like, it's all just a fake.
I mean, I hate to be this guy who's like, it feels like an Alex Jones type, just like shouting and banging on the desk, but it's like these polls.
Oh yeah.
I do not buy these polls. And that actually might lead into one of the next stories, because like the poll of this whole, what's his face, Gaibo. Like, I remember he posted this tweet and it was like, yeah, 80% of Canadians really want to, they want less freedom of speech. 80% of Canadians, want Facebook censored with like AI bots. And it's like,
yeah,
Canadians, who are you talking to?
Yeah, and I think
at all.
And I think that it's very, when during the 2019 election, during the one of the high school debates, and the high school debates had better questions than a lot of the adult debates, to be honest. But the freedom of speech question was asked, and I couldn't believe, like, Lloyd, the Liberal incumbent and the winner of the election at that time, said, oh, well, some speech is kind of inflammatory and dangerous, so we should be respectful of that. I was like, yeah, freedom of speech is the cornerstone of our democracy, and it should be respected. But I couldn't believe that the Liberal, who traditional, like a traditional center Liberal, would agree that freedom of speech is the the cornerstone of our democracy, I think. But I couldn't believe that the Liberal was like, no, freedom of speech has limits, and we're about there. Like, it's very interesting. But yeah, it's all framed as if it's for your sake. We are doing this hard thing for you. And it's like, no, you're not. Mm-hmm. No, you're not.
And I feel like a big part of this chess game is that idea of like the manufactured consent with the polls, with the like, oh, everybody, hey, if you think this is weird, you shouldn't, because most of Canadians think this way.
Yeah.
Don't you think that way? Yeah. Don't you think this is a good idea? And it's
Yeah, it's well done too, because the propaganda is such that if you disagree with it, you ignore it. And who are you going to engage with to fight about it, right? But when they go back and say, we had years of people calling for this and nobody said anything. And I mean, like, I'm the rare person who writes the letter and contacts the person and talks to the health unit and all that garbage, right? I'm the person who does that, because I'm just that guy. But most people go get upset and continue to scroll, and that's it. Or they maybe send a tweet about it or something like that, but that's the end of it. But then 10 years from now, when you look back, that's the paper of record, right? Like what the New York Times says, or what the Washington Post says, even more scary. Toronto Star says, right? What was happening? What was the zeitgeist? What were people asking for? Oh, Facebook hate was a really big problem. Not really. And so they're lying, and it just kind of makes you angry now, but they're rewriting history. It's the Ministry of Truth in real time. We're watching it in real time. They're just rewriting history as we're living it. Like they're writing the version of history they want.
I bet you doing your show so often too, when you're like cross-referencing different articles, I bet you've been reading an article and hit refresh and like the headline changes, or like the article changes, or like the information is like suddenly gone.
Yeah. Oh yeah. The other day. Yeah. I'll tell a story just quick. The other day there was an article that talking about how rich white Canadians were the ones traveling overnight over Christmas. The anonymized cell phone data shows. The anonymized cell phone data shows that rich white Canadians.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It's so anonymous. We know where you live. We know how much you make. We know where you go for breakfast. We know what you eat for breakfast. We know your wife's name is. Like, anonymous though. It's totally anonymous.
That's a weird news. That's more of like a flex.
So my buddy sent me this clip. Like, he took a screenshot of the article and he sent me the screenshot. He's like, rich white Canadians. He's like, you should use this on your show. And I was like, I definitely will. Send me the link. And so the next morning I was gonna highlight this. This was gonna be like the intro. I was like, rich white Canadians, eh? I've been in my garage the whole time. But the article had changed. the article had changed. So I even contrasted it on the show. I was like, this is what it said last night, and this is what it says this morning. And it still talked about wealthy white Canadians, but it was totally in a different context. Like one context, it sounded very racist. In the other context, it still sounded racist, but it was kind of a palatable racism. Like the racism that we've been fed, that it's okay to be against white people these days, which we don't have to get into that, but it's interesting.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think as we continue on our kind of technocratic march and rely on our technology more and more, it's like I'm already kind of longing for the, good old fashioned pen and paper, good old fashioned like having it physically in your hands, because it's going to get even easier and easier to manipulate that type of stuff. But speaking of which, with this kind of news item we have up here, you were talking about being critical and asking questions. It sounds like they don't want that. This show, Speaking Moistly, will be canceled because we are basically pointing out why certain government institutions aren't that good. Or could be improved.
Could be improved. Well, so here's the Heritage Minister. They're talking about implementing a Facebook law to target political dissent that chips away at the credibility of government institutions. So you can't insult the government. The government is beyond reproach. Let's make sure these Facebook comments and things on the internet are nice. And by nice, we mean not chipping away at the credibility of government. So who defines that, right? The same people who define that it's legal to kidnap people from airports, right? Like these are the people who are figuring this out for us. And it's very, I don't know, slippery slope.
Well, I mean, could we get something that sounds more authoritarian? And of course, when people think of authoritarianism or tyranny, they think of like a big like iron fist and like a rah rah rah. But I would just encourage people to use their creativity. It's like, you think the iron fist just came out of nowhere? It starts with these little saplings that they're planting, and it's like, if you don't see this as being one, then I don't know what to tell you.
I'll tell you, Hans Gruber over here has been practicing this terrorism for years. He looks exactly like from Die Hard. If you watch Die Hard, Severus Snape.
Isn't the background of Mr. Guilbeault kind of sinister? Wasn't he like a?
Yeah. He climbed the CN Tower on the outside of the CN Tower, and he was arrested. And he's got a. I mean, who better for the Heritage Minister, right?
Yeah. He climbed the CN Tower. Interesting.
He climbed, to protest some echo thing. I'm not exactly sure the details. I'm not sure. They were making fun of him in 2019, and they were saying that he was saying that by 2020 X, Y, Z would happen, and it didn't happen. They were saying, was being arrested worth it? I don't know. They were making fun of him, but I thought it was funny.
And now he's going to make a law. Ha ha! No more making fun of me. Not allowed.
That's right. Already, I'm pretty sure the censors are working overtime. Did you hear the Project Veritas release talking about how Facebook wanted to work with the Biden administration, and the Biden administration had already made the executive orders that aligned with what Facebook wants to do. So they're like, let's just work with these guys. And at the same time, like 3 days ago, Facebook made a release saying that, or the government made a release saying that Facebook and the government don't work closely. We're not collaborating to do the censorship. It's not happening. But privately, they are. So that's interesting.
Yeah, just trust the massive corporations in the government. Don't worry about it, okay?
Trust the massive corporations that have infiltrated the government. Never mind that are just like buddy with the government, that are like attachés and have direct phone lines to the MPs. Yeah, that's not a problem at all.
On that note, I was trying to craft a tweet today, but it's a very sensitive subject matter. But essentially, I haven't done extensive research on this, but I think it's relevant to the conversation. If I'm not mistaken, IBM back in World War II was like instrumental in helping, the Nazis systemically kill Jewish people. Like the IBM company had something to do with it, apparently. I don't know how accurate that is, but it kind of like, it kind of presents the question of like, oh yeah, let's trust the Microsoft guy.
Well, I think that did you see Aaron Brockovich?
The movie? No.
The movie. Oh, do you know what Aaron Brockovich is about? Aaron Brockovich is about the small town lawyer and his assistant who take on the big water company. I think it's the water company, who basically like shut down all legal challenges or whatever, and said nothing's happening here, and then they proved something was happening, and so like. Yeah, there's no reason to believe big corporations. I don't know. I don't know the particular. I'd be interested to see your link. I don't know the particulars on the IBM thing, but there are countless examples through history where corporations were pushing the edge of legal, and then when they went over, they lied about it when they were caught, right? Because you might as well lie, right? I guess. So yeah, no. Why trust corporations? I don't trust corporations. Facebook. I don't trust the government. No, they work for us, but they're pretending like they work for themselves and they dictate to us. You can have your rights back when don't ask questions. Next.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and then people don't make money off of war or anything like that.
No.
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 Big companies good.
What possible motivation would China have to infiltrate the Canadian government? Why would that help them? We trade with them.
That's silly. Honestly, that's silly. That's
How
let's just watch CBC together and
how ridiculous. How much money laundering? Okay. Quebec is set to reopen. Ontario is not. My kids still aren't back to school, and there's no real indication on when that will change. So that's interesting. But there are some places in Ontario that are back to school, and other places that aren't. And Quebec is going from curfews to an orange zone where the curfew is now pushed back to 9:30, and restaurants are allowed to be open until then. So that's weird. I don't know how anybody can look at like Florida or Sweden or Boston or any of the other places that have opened up and not had mass death, and look at even the stats that show seasonality, that show the places. There were 5 states, Nebraska, South Dakota, North Dakota, and a couple ones that are close by, that all had different approaches, and their curves are identical. And so I don't know how anybody can sit there and say this is anything more than playing politics, right? Like we're puppets, and people's businesses are being destroyed, people's mental health is being destroyed, people's livelihoods and familial relationships are being like wrecked. Things are not great, and people are saying, we've got isolation centers for, when everything falls apart. Like what?
Yeah, I mean, many people have kind of had this take on the whole COVID situation since the beginning, but I think more and more it's like, we're a bunch of. It feels like we're a bunch of lab rats getting tested. And guess what, folks? Unfortunately, something that I've been coming to terms with over the past couple of years of getting really into politics, Canada has a very docile and obedient populace. Yeah. And I think that, it's about the rules now. We haven't really we used to talk about the virus, we used to talk about health and safety, but no, it's just about the rules. What are the rules? How have they changed?
Yeah.
And then if you look on TV, every single little health blip that happens is just every molehill is turned into a huge mountain, blown out of proportion.
Yep.
And it's just striking the public with fear to continue to submit.
It is. Obey. But the public is done with it, I think. Here's Italy. Italy is ignoring the lockdown rules, and they've opened the restaurants, and they're clapping and cheering and saying, bravo to the owner, and having a big song. So that's nice. That's good for Italy. What do you think it's going to take here? Do you think they're just going to open us up for the summer? I'm worried they're going to open us up just a little tiny bit for the summer and then lock us all back down. I think that they're going to try and do it. And if they do, if we let them,
they're going to
continue.
If the election is going to happen, they're going to leverage the opening up into the election. So it's like, the opening up will happen just as the election cycle is starting. So everybody starts to love Trudeau again. Oh, he's doing everything right. He's doing everything great. So that they're going to use the unlocking as a big kind of selling points to win power, I think.
Maybe. And then lock us down even further when they've got their majority.
Well, I mean, I'm sorry. Like, I've seen the clips of all these, liberals campaigning and everything, and it's like it's funny because your daughter might be addicted to drugs, your son killed himself, you're going out of business, and your MP's nowhere to be found. But then it's election time.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
Here I am to help. Here I am. Make sure you vote for me. Stuffing like a brochure down their throat. It's
yeah.
like
Or in their G-string.
it's so obvious.
Yeah.
It's disgusting.
Yeah, yeah. The election or the electioneering of this whole thing is happening. So you think they'll tell us to wear 2 or 3 masks, 4 masks, 1 mask on the back of your head just in case the virus jumps from behind?
Yeah, yeah. Before we turned the camera on, we were saying how COVID has jumped the shark
Yes.
with the double masks. And my comment was, I never thought that the doubling down of COVID measures would have been like so on the nose with like an actual explicit double mask.
Yeah. Yep.
Oh
Yep.
man.
It's incredible. I mean, yeah. And then a week later, Fauci comes back and says, well, in this one, infectious disease expert warns double masking can do more harm. Dr. Fauci walked back the recommendation. There's no evidence to back up that wearing 2 masks is better than 1. There's so many. It's the inconsistencies that make this whole thing not very believable. It's very hard to say, yeah, we should lock down for another 6 weeks or another 7 weeks or another, go to get to COVID 0 when we know that the test has false positives, because no test is perfect. Even a nearly perfect test is going to have a lot of false positives if you're testing in the hundreds of thousands, right? So it's very interesting to be locked into this insanity, and it is insanity. Because if you play one part of the game, you have to play all of it, right? Like, and they want to test people, they want to intern people, they want to remove your rights. They have removed our rights. They want to collect DNA. I've heard that. What's her name? The controversial doctor that I talk about in my usual show, in Canada Poly. She was talking about how PCR tests are flawed, and that the Chinese government or China was using the PCR tests to collect DNA. And I thought, that's interesting, because we're at a situation where you don't need to prove who you are to vote, but you need to hand over your DNA if you want to walk into this movie theater, right? Or if you want to go on this airplane here, look up. I'm going to swab this thing, right? Like, whose DNA is that, right?
And it went from, I saw a tweet. It was so funny. What did it say? It was like, it went from 2 weeks to flatten the curve to wear 3 masks and get anally swabbed.
Yeah. Welcome to the new normal, you sucker.
Like, what happened? Like 2 weeks to flatten the curve, and now we're here. Like, I'm, hands around my ankles.
Yeah.
Never allowed to leave my house again. Like,
yeah. Please let me open my business. I just want to sell something.
That escalated quickly.
Yeah, very quickly. And I mean, like, I used to wonder how people in the Second World War would be in a situation where they would be okay with losing their freedoms, be okay with packing people onto rail cars, be okay with whatever happens to them, they probably deserved it anyway. Or be okay with not knowing, be okay with, like, I wonder, they had that house and now that house is for sale, or, there's some other people living in that house or whatever.
The uncertainty, a lot of uncertainty happens.
Yeah. And I mean, the internet didn't exist then, I guess. So it's one of those things where I understand better now. When everybody goes insane, you're like, hold on a second. And how do you verify? Like, when there's no internet, when the counterculture has been literally, like, the books have been burned and the people who started killed because they could. How do you fight back against that? And we're seeing a technocratic crackdown, a la laws about Facebook, etc., to do a very similar thing, to crack down on anybody who dares to commit wrongthink on the internet, right?
Yeah, absolutely. It's it does kind of add a lot of interesting context to atrocities that have happened in the past, because we always ask, how could
yeah.
people just have stood by and watched this happen?
Yeah.
And it's like, well,
and here we stand.
The fact is, kids, like, propaganda is very effective. Fear is very effective. It's basically what it comes down to.
Yeah, infiltration and communism. Apparently, they're very what's the word?
Persuasive.
Yeah, that is the word. Thank you. Very persuasive. More persuasive than you'd think after seeing how many people get killed due to these things.
Yeah. But everything. I mean, the trouble today is everything's been rebranded.
Yeah.
The good labels have been, like, we're told it's a good label, but really it's rotten. You know, like
Yeah. Oh
all
yeah.
labels of everything is just kind of like it's a complete hodgepodge. I still can't believe how often people will say, well, they're a philanthropist. They said they're a philanthropist. They must be doing something good. You know, they said that they care. They
Mm-hmm.
must. That's what they said.
Yeah. How
No one
many?
ever lies about that.
No. How many countries is Bill Gates? Like the WHO had to admit recently that Bill Gates' vaccine was causing a polio outbreak. WHO, there's an article about this. So I mean, it's not like the philanthropists always do the right things. It's not like even if you intend to do the right thing. Like say you set out to let's say replace Reddit, right? Like I'm going to replace Reddit, and you think to yourself, and you put up a thing that looks kind of like Reddit. Have you replaced Reddit? Well, no. I mean, there's a lot of things that make Reddit what it is, right? So it's very hard to flesh that all out with just the intention. And I feel like that's how flimsy it all is. It's just an intention. There's no substance to it.
And I mean, what's frustrating when it comes to like massive, prestigious institutions and these big brands and these big people that we're supposed to trust, they can screw up, make mistakes again and again and again and again, and we're supposed to, hey, don't they may have messed up this time, but you have to keep trusting
But
them.
next time they'll do it. Yeah.
No, but like, and then an everyday person like me or you make a mistake, your career's over. You're done.
Oh yeah.
Get the hell out of here.
Yeah.
You
That's
know,
it.
and it's just it's such an intense double standard that yeah, it's maddening.
Yeah, it is. It really is. It's very. Well, I think it's designed to be that way. All right, last thing. Silver. Have you bought your physical silver? Do you have silver anywhere?
I only have GME, AMC, and Dodge.
Dog
Coin.
coin to the moon, baby.
That's right. That's right.
The memes are very funny. I don't have any silver. I was like, do I like on Saturday? I was looking at one of the places in Canada that says it sells silver, and it was like they had $1,000 or a $1,300 silver bar, and I was like, do I just buy it or do I ask my wife and then buy it? And I said, hey, come on, let's have a conversation. So yada yada. I didn't buy it, and now it's sold out. But I don't know. We'll see how things go. I don't have GM. I don't have any GameStop either. But it's one of those things that this is an interesting thing to watch, right? If you listen to some people who know things about things, the GameStop thing exposed the weakness in the market, and the silver is meant to drive something into it.
Well, I don't know a terrible amount about the stock market. I think that I actually kind of suspect, my intuition tells me that the whole silver squeeze thing is actually just a distraction from the aggressive shorts that they were taking out
on GME.
On these other failing companies. Yeah. I think that what's most notable about the situation is it's a flagrant example of cronyism.
Right. But so I agree with you, but I think that there's more to it. I talked about this on my show today too. I think there's more to it. There's speculation that the hedge funds were defrauding and creating more shares to make the short worse, right? Like, does that make sense? Like to punish the people who are holding for long. So they're this tweet here says, failed to deliver data indicates that institutional insiders may have counterfeited a massive number of GameStop shares for shorts. This may be why establishment is trying to stop retail investors from buying more shares. Highly illegal and could lead to systemic collapse. So if they counterfeited shares, if GameStop has 100% of shares, but there's 220% out there, and retail customers have bought up 100% of the shares of GameStop, and they believe not they believe anything. If there's that many shares, it means that somebody's been counterfeiting these stocks, and it means that there's systemic problem. And this is the second. And I read a much longer write up about it, but I thought, man, what if this is. Yeah,
no, I mean, I think going back to like the beginning of the timeline of this scenario, of this happening, I don't think that it was supposed to happen. I don't think that this Redditor was supposed to expose this kind of like shorting opportunity, and like the fact that a group of people on the internet all kind of bought it as a meme, and they actually ended up paying off. But in terms of how things have developed and how these hedge funds may have adapted or changed or slanted the system, like
Mhm.
we already know that people like Robinhood, the Robinhood app made it impossible for people to buy more of certain stocks. It's like that's like a
Yep.
flagrant example of cronyism.
Yep.
And I think the way,
Corruption. Yep.
and then I think, yeah, in terms of what happens next, the way in which counterfeited shares, I don't know, but it's like, the fact that cronyism,
Yeah.
they make analogies of a casino, right? And it's like,
Mhm.
if you're winning against the house, then the house is going to do something to make sure.
Shut it down. Yep.
Yeah.
And then ban you for life, right? You don't get to play in that house anymore.
Yeah, and then change the rules to make it harder for that ever to happen again.
Yeah, right. Exactly. You're not wrong. You're not wrong.
But
You want to talk?
I was just going to say, some of the best parts I think of watching this unfold has been like these Wall Street people being interviewed
Yeah.
and trying to make these weird like arguments about, oh, it's so the did you see the one where there's a clip of a guy saying like the biggest loss is the last loss of human capital, and all these young men spending time looking at AMC stocks all day when they could be learning skills and like building relationships and things like this. And it's like, hold on, so you're like a billionaire hedge fund guy, and all of a sudden you care about like addiction and like social issues? Like that's,
Yeah.
that's so
Yeah.
funny.
It's like convenient timing, buddy. Convenient timing to grow a
Very
conscience.
convenient. Yeah. When you were buying like stock and like Budweiser and like pharmaceuticals,
Yeah.
you didn't say anything about that.
I miss the old Budweiser commercials, not the horses one, the Al Bundy ones. I remember when Al Bundy went in to film a Budweiser commercial. My dad was talking about watching Married with Children yesterday. He's like, we still watch Married with Children. We don't watch any of these crap new shows.
My era of Budweiser was the
Oh yeah, that was half decent too. That was half
Yeah.
decent too. But there was a time when they were openly exploiting everybody. But that was America. That was the 80s. That was America in the 80s. They
Right.
openly
Yeah.
exploited pretty much anybody they could. That's yeah. And Canada was like, "You go, America."
It felt fun back then.
Well,
Now it's
I'm
kind of
watching. I'm watching. I was rewatching Frasier last night,
Oh.
and man, I had a smile. Like I don't know, 30 seconds in, I was laughing about something, and we watched 2 episodes back to back, and I was howling most of the time. I thought it was hilarious, and it wasn't. They were making jokes about race. Like one of the in Frasier, they would do a dark. Like title of the scene, and one of the titles was two white guys discuss something about coffee, and I can't remember what it was, but it was it was supposed to be a joke, and it was a funny little joke, but something that you wouldn't get away with now. And I thought, man, like what a sad thing we've lost. Like they were being funny to be funny, and race was on the table. You could make fun of it, you could point it out, you could say this happened. Like it is two white guys talking about whatever it was. I can't remember what it was. But now it's like that's verboten, man. You can't talk about that. Can't do that.
Yeah, and it sucks because it really prevents any real comedy from happening. We've
Yep.
kind of talked about this off camera, but like right now, the only type of like comedy that's allowed is like this degenerate form of comedy that's like either like slapstick, like violent or sexual, or
Yeah.
just kind of like outrageous and rude. And it's too bad because it leaves no room for kind of sophisticated comedy that's based on truth. And the truth is,
Yeah.
we're all different.
Yeah.
And, stereotypes exist for a reason. And it's like, hey, I'm not trying to like offend people or discriminate or anything like this. But it's like, if you want to really, live in the world and feel more comfortable in the world, embracing that truth and embracing differences is a great way to do that. And that's why
Yeah.
I think comedy really brings people together.
Yeah.
And it allows people to kind of laugh about how we do have differences. And there's nothing wrong with that. It just simply is.
Yeah, yeah, and it's not. Yeah, it doesn't make one group of people better than the other group of people just because one group is different than the other group in whatever way.
Well, and the thing
it's
is,
just
it's like, but who cares if it does? One group might be better at playing basketball.
Yeah,
I don't
yeah, yeah.
know. Like,
Yeah,
that's
yeah.
an example.
You're right.
Just kidding, as an example,
Yeah.
But it's too bad that we kind of political correctness has just confected our
Yeah,
culture
yeah.
to the extent
It
that
has.
it kind of just like I don't want to offend anyone, and it's just horrible because it just doesn't allow us just to kind of connect with ourselves and connect with like that raw truth.
Yeah, I was reading through Twitter, and somebody had taken a picture of something they posted on Facebook. And the thing that they posted on Facebook said, "Listen, I don't want to offend anyone. I believe people shouldn't, die of COVID, and lives matter and Black Lives Matter, but." And I'm like, "Oh my God. Well, let's do a land acknowledgement too before you fucking talk." Excuse my language. But seriously, we've gone around the bend. Like, hold on. COVID matters, and your experiences matter, and shut up, just say it. Come on. Like, get over yourself, man. It's like watching a 13-year-old try and ask somebody on a date. You're like, just say it. Just say it.
Yeah, and it can't be good for our kind of like our mental, spiritual health when we're constantly like neutering our thoughts, constantly neutering like, what's simply on our mind. Yep. And, I have a hard time believing, like, saying that, we live in a free country. It's like, disclaimer.
Yeah.
Like,
don't be Christian
before I say anything.
Yeah.
So, yeah. Yep.
It's a scary world, man. We live in a free country, but, caveat, don't go traveling. Don't worship the wrong God. And by wrong God, I mean, you know what I mean. Wink, wink. Don't be not nice. Don't disobey the COVID rules.
You can't start a small business unless you have this much capital. You can't start a family unless you have this much capital. Can't go traveling unless you have this much capital.
Oh yeah, you don't have $6,000 to quarantine.
Can't have an opinion on this long list of topics.
Yep.
Can't talk about Black issues unless you're Black. Can't talk about gay issues unless you're gay. Can't talk about immigration at all.
Can't talk about women's issues unless you identify as a woman at the time you're speaking of them.
Yeah. You don't actually have to be a biological woman. That's an interesting. No. We'll explain that one later.
We'll get to that. We'll circle around to that again.
Circle back.
Circle back.
Shout out the new White House press secretary.
I miss Kaylee. Oh well.
Let's focus on Canada, man.
Let's focus on Canada. In Myanmar.
Oh.
They had okay. We'll finish the show on this because I got to get going because there's a play date happening very shortly. But Myanmar had an election in November. They used Dominion and Smartmatic machines. They had a coup, or an attempted coup, and the government stopped the coup by these Smartmatic machines, according to the government. And to remove that president out of power. That president that leader from Myanmar has pictures with Barack Obama and Hillary Clinton. But I think the biggest news of the whole thing was the woman doing aerobics in front of the building where the coup was taking place.
I saw that.
Obviously, the biggest part of this was the woman doing the aerobics.
It seems like wherever Dominion voting systems is being used, there's always like weird discrepancies that happen. There seems to be these strange disagreements, whether it's like, a Canadian leadership election for a specific political party, or
that machine just ate the ballots. It's fine.
Yeah. We need to, but it's, Dominion is a very trusted and prestigious company. So
sure.
I don't know why you would question something like that, man.
Just don't ask Linwood. Or no, wait, was it Sidney Powell? Oh goodness. Giuliani? Who knows? It's an unbelievable world, right? You get those.
All I know, the new season of America has been really boring so far.
Yeah,
this new guy is just like really boring, like everyone expected. He's passing all these weird new rules.
Yep.
I don't know, man.
Last season was much better, much more exciting.
Way more exciting.
No breaks on that train. Okay, we'll end there. Where can people find you, sir?
You can find me on my YouTube channel, Greg Wycliffe. You can also check me out on Twitter at GDub, GDDDUB.
Nice. G-Dub. And me, you can find on Rumble and YouTube. I do teaser clips. You can find me on Odyssey for full length as well, Rumble and Odyssey. And for Speaking Moistly, we're obviously here in full length. You can check out CanadaPoly.com. You can check out CanadaReport.co. That's my scratch pad where I'm kind of writing down the things that I'm working on. And SpeakingMoistly.co will get you mine and Greg's back catalog. So check that out too. Thanks for watching, everybody. Here is the Prime Minister to play us out.
Moistly, keep 2 meters apart, speaking moistly.